Hello and welcome to another episode of Laptop Retrospective, and today we are looking at another keyboard from SkyLoong. Now, I've featured a few of these keyboards on the channel over the last few years, but this one is probably the most interesting one in the sense that I might make an argument that it is the most customizable keyboard that I have looked at, but it also might be the most customizable keyboard under 200 Canadian dollars. So this is the GK104 Pro. And there's a lot of different configurations that it comes in. This is a titanium gray version 3.0 that features a 2.0 inch screen, and it's fitted with KTT rose silver linear switches. Now, let's go ahead and unbox this thing, and then you'll see what's inside and why I would make the argument that this could be the most customizable keyboard in this price range. This is a full-sized keyboard, which is one of my favorites. I like to have that number pad and all the keys available. We have a manual staring us at right from the get-go that shows some of the features already. It tells us where we can actually install knob switches, where we can install the screen, how this onboard calculator works. Yes, it has an onboard calculator. It gives us some indicators on how all of this can work, where we can install stuff, including a split space bar. So lots to look into, and then we have the same thing in Chinese on the other side. One of the things that I appreciate is SkyLoong very often ships with these keyboard covers. This isn't just packaging, this is something that you can put over your keyboard to keep dust and dirt off when you're not using it. So remember, don't throw this away. It's actually part of your keyboard kit. And we're going to flip this up to see our accessories, which is a USB-A to USB Type-C cable. We have a full-sized spacebar stability bar. We have a combination key puller and key cap puller, or switch puller, I should say. We have a whole bunch of extra switches, and then we have a whole load of extra keycaps in here. And this is something that I really appreciate. I wish more manufacturers would do, because especially when you have less than 100% layouts, very often the keycaps that are included are not necessarily the keys that I want to prioritize. So it's always good to see the full kit. And then of course we have the keyboard itself. And here we are. So like I said, the key color scheme is the titanium gray. There are lots of options on the website, but this one I thought was kind of the most retro looking, so a good fit for the channel. We can see that it comes pre-installed with these three knobs, but according to our manual here, we can install another two here if we want. And it appears that we can install one on the escape key, which could be interesting because if you think about the escape key, you always press it, but it doesn't have any additional functionality. But if you twist it, of course, you could make it do other things. So you could still have it bound to pressing down to being escape, but maybe having the rotation for changing applications, that sort of thing. So that's kind of neat. Like I said, this includes a 2.0 screen here, which you can program in the software, and we'll talk more about that in a little while. And we also have the switch on the side of the keyboard, or switch the applications. I'll learn more about that in a moment. But overall, I like what I see out of the box. If we flip it over, we can see this compartment here, which is being held down with what appears to be 4 hex bolts. We can actually see our 2 user replaceable batteries, both 4,000 milliamps each. So we have a lot of battery capacity, and these are just double-sided taped in there, but you can easily remove them and replace them. The wiring is right there. So that's really nice to see that these are, again, user replaceable, or if you are disposing of the keyboard, you can remove the batteries and do so responsibly. On the bottom, we also have adjustable feet, so you can get whatever angle you want. Small, large, and then obviously flat. And then over here we have what I suspect is our power switch. Yep. So that's probably putting it into Bluetooth mode. The Bluetooth indicator icon is showing there. It shows the health of the battery, which from this camera angle is a bit difficult to see, but from here it's perfectly fine. It has the date and time, and it's correct from me turning this thing on. Or pardon me, I should say the date is correct. I don't see a time, but that means that this thing was set at the factory and the battery is persistent even when the machine is off. It's still clocking down. So that's pretty cool. And then I'm guessing the other is for 2.4 gigahertz. Oh wow, this is like, that's a piece of metal. Yeah, this is like a, I don't know, could be like a zinc alloy, but it's magnetized. And then that just fits right there. Very neat. And of course this covers up the 2.4 gigahertz USB-A module if you need it. I always appreciate when these are stored somewhere on the keyboard out of the way, but easy to find. And yeah, the extra chunky piece of gray metal there is a nice extra. I wouldn't really call it necessary to cover it up, but it does make this thing look really, really slick. I'm just going to open up the little bag of keys here to see what we've got inside. So that's for the full-length space bar, as is this bar if you don't want the split. I will be running the split bar. We have an enter key that's gray if you don't like the green. We have a regular escape key if you don't like the the mangled escape key. We've got insert, we've got delete, scroll lock, and print screen, home. We've got page up, page down, pause, and then we have 4 regular colored arrow keys if you want to mute the look there as well. So very much every single key that you would want to have in this, and then of course you have the extra switches to swap out for these areas, so that would be 9. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Yeah, 9. So there's 9 switches in there. You could just completely remove this and the knobs if you didn't like what you were getting. But for the price point, hey, try it. And if you don't like the screen, or if you find that it's just a bit too gimmicky, you just yank the screen off, don't use it, you know, lesson learned if you will. But you still have a perfectly usable keyboard that you can customize however you want. And I think that's one of the nice things about this, is that you don't really have to suffer the ultimate buyer's remorse, which is being stuck with a keyboard that you really can't use because of how customizable it is. So we're going to fast forward a little bit here after I've had the opportunity to use it, talk about some of the typing speeds I can get on it, because that's always important to me, and just the overall functionality. So stay tuned for that. 68 words per minute on this is pretty decent. I did have the screen set up just for fun to capture the actions per minute, or actions per second, just for fun. It doesn't really have any equation to typing speed or accuracy, but it was a good excuse to use this section of the screen. All right, ladies and gentlemen, lots to talk about with this thing. And the biggest and longest conversation I'm going to have with you has to do with the software. Now, when I got this thing out of the box, I took a quick look at the very comprehensive guide that talks about all the different components. And something that I learned very quickly is that none of these components really talk to one another. They're all more or less isolated systems. And what I mean by that is, like, this display up here has absolutely nothing to do with the keyboard software for the main keyboard or the knobs. And just like this screen has absolutely nothing to do with that keyboard software, it has nothing to do with this screen. So while all these components are in one unit, you have to use multiple pieces of software to actually have the whole thing function as you see it in front of you and as you see it on the videos. So we're going to start at the left-hand side of the keyboard where things are simple, and we'll move over to where things get complex. Alright, so at the time of filming this video, I had to grab the software from the link down here. When I went to the website for SkyLoong, the version that was available to download wasn't as new, at least on the page that I was looking at on here. So that's kind of one of the complaints I have to level, is that all the software is scattered, it seems, across two websites. Now, the software that you get for programming the keyboard is more or less isolated to the actual standard keys. So you will see in the pictogram the display up here being accurately represented, and we can see the knob controls above all of the keys that have them currently set up. We also have lighting effects. We can download macros and other files, but that is where the customization for this section of the keyboard ends. You can also set up the configuration for the split spacebar or a whole spacebar if you so choose. So the next part we have to talk about is this screen here, and it's super intuitive on how this is set up. At least it wasn't for me. The very first thing that you need to understand is, like I said, the previous software that we just walked through is not the software for this screen. And depending on what version of this screen you have, there's different ways to essentially set it up and log in. And this is practically a mini computer that's running a series of different apps. Now, some of these apps require additional programs on top of the program that you would use just to program this one. So when you get this thing, you have to use the specific menu here to navigate into it and set up Wi-Fi. So this connects independently to Wi-Fi from everything else. It doesn't matter if it's physically connected or what have you. And thankfully, if you do a little bit of digging, you can find the instructions for the Screen Tool user guide, and then you can navigate through the instructions here to the 3.0 user guide, which this is the example of, or you have to connect to your local Wi-Fi network. It gives you a QR code interface if you wanted to use your phone, or you can just use the IP address of the that's found on the actual screen itself. Now, if you want to use the CPU and memory usage tool, you have to run a separate server exe and then connect to it via the IP address for this module that's built into the actual keyboard. So it is what I would call clunky. So if we navigate back here, we see that I've currently got it on the APS screen. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to slide this over to the document camera so we can get a much better look. If we hold down the function and then tap the tilde key, it will rotate through any images I've uploaded to it or any GIFs, and then it will launch this, which will give you CPU and memory. And there is a essentially a DOS config file running on my computer, which I'm not thrilled about, to give me CPU and memory usage if I really needed that on my keyboard. We also have this screen here, which tells you kind of the basics, that it's on Windows mode, date, time, power, pretty basic. Now, on the older models, you would actually pry this up, and there's a USB port for you to plug it directly into the computer and program it. And if we pry this out, we can see that the USB Type-C port to access the thing locally is still present even though the web interface is completely viable. And if we want, we can open up the screen by removing the 4 screws in the back, and we can take a look at the board and the chips that we've got on this thing. And it looks like it's being driven by an ESP3253. And that makes sense. That's pretty common to see in all sorts of builds of this size and type. But it's just nice to know what's actually on the inside here, and I suspect that there are a few of you out there that are already thinking of some things that you might be able to do to this and this keyboard as a whole. We can see that these 2 specialized switches have been installed to essentially pull power, but we can put in the other switches that came with the kit and give ourselves the 6 keys there if we wanted those instead. So overall, it's nice to see that you can physically open these things and see what's on the inside, even though the software packages are a little clunky, and it's a shame that they don't really work in tandem. So one of the last things we should talk about is the Web 3.0 interface for the screen. It does give you a series of options of changing the theme, the different modules from PC and memory monitoring, the video and GIF management, image management for those still images or GIFs that you want to put on there. There is an upload system that you can use for both. So it's just one more layer of software that you need to be ready to use. And if you're using a single image, you want to make sure that it's set on fixed display versus carousel. If it's on carousel, then the image will flash every couple of seconds, and it can be a bit distracting. Let's continue our conversation to the last section while we've got it under here. There is a switch on the side of the unit that if we flip, we turn it into calculator mode, which is pretty straightforward. Now there is some additional functionality. So for example, if when we're in calculator mode, we hold down the function and 0 key, it starts to talk to us.
2 plus 5 equals 7.
Is that helpful? I don't know, but it's there. And from what I understand, it's in English and in Chinese. One of the other things that is interesting about this, and it took me a while to figure out how to turn it off, is the sound effects. So right now you can hear sound effects when I press certain keys, and you can cycle through them. Now these came on by default, and I looked in the manual here, and it said previous sound effect, next sound effect, and then voice broadcast. And I couldn't find where it actually says how to turn these off. It turns out, when I contacted the manufacturer, that function 0 also turns off the sound effects, and the voice broadcast is only when the switch is flipped on the side from the O position to the I position, or the on position. So it would be nice if that was updated in the next set of instructions that they print for this, because that was a bit confusing. So overall, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to stick to what I said earlier, in that this is probably the most customizable keyboard that you can get for under $200. That being said, these 3 systems, the screen here, and then the rest of the keyboard, don't really talk to each other, and they all require different pieces of software and configuration to get them the way that you want them to. So as long as that's not a deterrent for you, and or running programs in the background to support some of the keyboard functionality, then you're in good shape. But I do want to be transparent about that. It's not a single piece of software that you need, and you do have to do a little bit of hunting, at least as of the production of this video. To me, the solution is simple. All SkyLoong really has to do is put all the software packages for the keyboard on the actual page for the keyboard itself. A lot of manufacturers already do this. They have like a support or a download section directly tied to it. As it is right now, you kind of have to go into the software section and click through and pick the correct software. There's also 2 websites. There's the SkyLoong website, and then there's the website that is printed at the bottom of the instruction manual, which is not the same, and in some cases has more up-to-date software packages than the SkyLoong website. So the software management, I think, could really stand to be condensed and brought under one roof somehow, if at all possible. At any rate, ladies and gentlemen, if you are interested in getting this keyboard or even just learning more about it, I'll leave some links in the description down below that you can check out at your leisure. Hopefully you enjoyed this video. Definitely one of the most unique keyboards I've ever featured on this channel so far. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.